Crosshatch is very similar to line proximity in that you start off with lines. So you can see here what I did is I started the actual drawing for you using line proximity. I started adding some crosshatch. So I started going in opposite directions to start to darken. So you could see the difference or starting to see the difference in value. Okay. It's easier for me to do it in the background than it is to do it on the object to show you this. So as you can see, I started with line proximity using my 4H and I created a value right in there. Okay, and then what I'm going to start to do is I start to cross my lines, and once again I'm using just my 4H pencil. Okay, and I'm going to try to use value to create the edges. So if you notice, I'm starting right by the cube and drawing away from it. Okay, making my nice long lines. Yes, you could use shorter, choppier lines, and I could show you that in the sphere maybe. Okay, and I start to separate my lines as I start to get towards the lighter area because I don't necessarily want that to be too much darker. Okay, you're already starting to see a difference between this value and this value. Okay, and I'm using the value to create the edges. Now, as I want to make this a little bit darker, I'm going to jump into my, I'm going to jump straight over to my 2B pencil. Okay, and I'm going to come in here, keeping my lines fairly close together. And I'm going to cross over my other lines going in a different direction. You can start to see how I'm doing that, right? And as I start to get closer to that outside edge, I'm going to maybe lighten my pressure on my lines and start to separate so it starts to blend in to what I already have. But it's also going to darken a little bit. Don't forget the negative space areas in here. Then I'm going to go back over and I'm going to actually start to keep my lines a little bit tighter together. And that's going to start to create the darker value in the background using line proximity, using crosshatch. And you'll notice that it starts to create these darker values. It also creates a texture. Start to separate my lines. A little bit less pressure as well. And you can start to see the difference in value. You should also be able to see how the cube is now setting out against the background more. You see that? Pretty cool, right? Now, over here, with this part, once again, the cast shadow is part of the wall. So since I already started the cast shadow, and I already started that wall with some line, the way that I'm going to finish this off is I'm going to come in over here, I'm going to add another layer with 4H over it. Okay, kind of darkens it up a little bit. And now I'm going to address the cast shadow. The cast shadow, once again, I'm going to jump over to my 2B pencil or my HB, and I'm going to create this value right in this area. So all I'm going to do is just inside that area. Okay, so I come into here, right in here, and then cross it. If need be, I could cross it the other direction as well. And I start to create the cast shadow on that wall. You see it? Okay, again, not necessarily done, but you get the idea. With the sphere, you'll notice that I actually added some value to it already with my 4H. Okay, so I already added 2 sets of lines. Same thing over here. Okay, but now over here, what I'm going to do is to kind of start to create the 3-dimensional quality of it, is I'm going to start actually looking at my midtones and my dark values. So I'm actually going to, instead of jumping to my 2B from my 4H, I'm actually going to jump over to my HB. Okay, my HB is going to give me a nice light value that I could blend in, but also starting to darken up the sphere. So I'm going to come in here. So I'm basically looking at this kind of area in here. I'm going to add more of this line. And you'll notice that I start to create a variation in value right there, right? So it's kind of made a little bit lighter, a little bit darker. Good. Now I'm going to jump over to my darker area in here. So my lines are going to be a little bit tighter together in that area. And you'll notice that my marks tend to be a little bit choppier with this. Okay? Because I'm using what's known as more of like a hatch mark. So I'm hatching. See that? And you can start to see how I'm starting to create the different values in here. Yes, I could use more blending by adding a couple more lines using my 2H or possibly my 4H to blend that in, but I want to give you the idea as to like how this works. Okay, that's in essence crosshatch. Again, crosshatch is typically not used by itself. It's usually used on top of rendering modeling to create different values and textures. Only when you're really working with ink, pen and ink, or just pen, you're really only going to use the crosshatch by itself. All right, hope that helps.